That was a good episode. I truly did not expect the show to open up with a whole nother new group being introduced, and definitely didn't expect them to stumble upon the prison either. I think they're actually a pretty awesome group. I'm excited that they're in the show. I am glad that they're seemingly coming around to the realization that they need to kill the woman who was bit. They almost did before the show ended. What I like more about this new group is what it says about the world of The Walking Dead in general, that it's not just going to be the prison and Woodbury that have survived. Many other groups are going to be around and going to be randomly interacting. It's going to happen, and that's a terrific ideal. It also leaves the avenues open for other story points that they can just randomly generate by having new people come into the show. And then most importantly about what happened with the new group is that Carl got to play the hero, and was a pretty badass hero at that. He not only saved them, but then he took over his dad's role and kept them locked away in that specific part of the prison. It's not surprising they were upset at first, or the one woman was at least, but I really like that her husband came over and understood that it's something they're going to have to deal with for now, and they're going to have to accept it really quickly, because Carl's the one with the power and the gun. On a side note, I was really kind of hoping that Morgan and Dwayne were going to be in that group. It's about time they came back in the show, and I thought this would be a great entrance for them. But it wasn't true. And then, of course, there was the funniest part of the show, with Axel at first hitting on Beth, and then calling Carol a lesbian, and when he found out that she's not, he began to hit on her. So in other words, he's open for any business, any and all business. And while it's a comedy point right now, that could actually turn into trouble later on. On that note, I was sad to see second Oscar go. He was a decent addition to the show, and unfortunately they killed off another character. I suppose the best way to talk about the events at Woodbury is to hit them in order, so I'll start with the fact that Maggie and Glenn were going to be sent to the Screamer Pit. I wish we got to see more of what that's supposed to be, but it sounds pretty terrible. It's probably just a nickname for a pit filled with walkers, because I don't know what else it could be. Maybe it's the fact that those who are in the pit do the screaming because it's pitch black and they can't see the walkers come and kill them, or something of that nature, but we didn't get to find out so far. And then in that same time, with Merle and the governor talking about what to do with Glenn and Maggie, they had a discussion about Daryl, Merle's brother, as well, and this obviously ties into the end of the episode, but you could sort of tell the governor was lying, and even Merle knew it a little bit, but he was still going to go along with the plan. He unfortunately didn't see it in time, but we'll talk about the end of the episode when we get there. And it actually seemed like when Merle asked about Glenn and Maggie, when he got the response that they were to be killed, that he was a little disappointed, almost as if he didn't want to kill them. And it's probably just because of his connection with Glenn, or maybe it was a sign that the governor's willing to kill more people than I thought, so I and my brother could be in trouble. But I don't know, I got the feeling he didn't want Glenn and Maggie to die. Not that it really matters, of course, because Glenn and Maggie broke apart that walker's body to make plague daggers, as I'm going to call them, a ingenious idea. And then, of course, Rick and Daryl's group rescued them with smoke bombs and got them away. They're actually going to be safe for the beginning of next mid-season. And in that same moment, there's the part of Daryl sticking with Rick. He obviously left the group, but he could have turned to try and help Merle in some way. But thankfully and intelligently, he knew to stick with Rick. It was Rick and that group that he's been with this whole time who, I assume like Glenn, he thinks of as family. And so he couldn't help himself but to help him out, and it was the right thing to do. I'm really glad, because it makes me like Daryl as a character even more. And speaking of liking Daryl more, and also liking Andrea less, the show's doing a great job of keeping her naive. There's the smoke grenades, the governor lying to her, Andrea just sort of being stupid, not asking the important questions, or caring about the important questions. For instance, the part where Michonne and the governor fought, and Andrea interrupted at the very end. And I'll start at the very beginning with Michonne's very cool plan to wait in the governor's office to kill him, almost assassin style, when he came back. And she would have been successful for sure. I believe her plan of sitting in the chair and then probably popping up right at that second when he entered and killing him would have worked. No sweat. But instead, she hears Penny and exposes all the heads to both the viewers, although we already knew, herself and Andrea, exposes Penny, and then of course when the governor interrupts her and Penny's little scene, she kills Penny. This of course all leads to the baddest breakout fight I've ever seen in the show. Maybe in any show, it's hard to say. But I loved Michonne and the governor's struggle. That was some fantastic choreography and ass-kicking. I'm really glad that she blinded the governor. I have a suspicion that he's always blinded in the comic, or also gets blinded in the comic at least, so they were probably just playing to that, but I didn't see it coming. I thought she was either going to kill him, or that he was going to kill her, one or the other. I unfortunately suspected the latter. I was actually even thinking that Penny was going to kill Michonne, and that they were going to, stupidly, kill off a fan favorite from the comic. They did not, however, and instead Michonne half-blinded the governor, and then Andrea interrupted, and basically questioned Michonne, like, how could you do this? And then Michonne left, peaceably enough. But then later on, Andrea asks the governor, why was Michonne here? And the governor answers, well, you tell me, you're the one who knew her. And that should be a huge clue, and it's just stupid of Andrea to not realize what could be going on. There's only one answer that makes sense. There's no reason for Michonne to come back outside of the governor being an evil douchebag. No matter what the details of her reasoning to come back are, it boils down to the governor being an evil douchebag. And Andrea should be smart enough to figure that out. And it's also stupid on Michonne's part that she did not kill Andrea and the governor. And I know that's a big step that she's probably not willing to take, despite that she's basically a golem. But killing Andrea and the governor would have solved a lot of future problems. And I know it's Andrea and she doesn't want to kill her best friend, but obviously Andrea is in league with the governor, and she needs, Michonne, needs to kill the governor. Needs to happen. If it had happened, the whole rest of this season wouldn't have been an issue. I'm sure there would have been other issues, and of course that would lead to not really having a story to tell. But that's not the point. I'm talking about from the character's perspective. Michonne should have done the deed. And before we talk about the end of the show, there's one other small thing I wish to touch on. And that's the fact that Rick had a vision-esque kind of thing of Shane coming to shoot and kill them. It was obviously all in his mind, as he did shoot the foul Shane, and it turned out to be just some Woodbury resident. But that was a very strange part. I really hadn't expected it, and I'm not really sure what it's supposed to mean. We know Rick had a little crazy vision going on, so I'm actually kind of glad that that's back, because Rick operates fantastically in crazy vision. But I also thought it was cured by his ending the telephone conversation with Lori. So whatever it ultimately means, I'm all for it. And now the end of the show. If you haven't watched the episode, and for some reason you're watching this, the governor turned on Merle, used him as a scapegoat of sorts, to rally the townspeople against a known enemy, a known quantity, so that they would be more willing to continue to follow him, the governor. What's interesting is this is what Merle should have sort of seen coming. He knew he couldn't trust the governor in full, but he stayed around just a little too long. And then, of course, they brought out Daryl, which was an interesting part that the governor knew Daryl was Merle's brother. Now, he knows that Daryl was in the group, and he knows that his name is Daryl because of the information Merle told him, but he couldn't have known for sure that that man was Merle's brother. He was just an unknown person to him. So I can only assume that Daryl was caught, maybe, and tried to explain that he was Daryl, Merle's brother, that he wanted to see him and talk to him, or something of that nature. What I really like is the dynamic they've suddenly created. They've pitted Daryl and Merle together again against the world. We don't really know their story, and I guess it's being saved for a video game that's coming out next year. But Daryl and Merle have always lived their lives together against the world. That's how they survived the apocalypse up until Merle got handcuffed and had to cut his hand off. So now it's the two of them again against the whole world, so to speak. And I don't think either of them are going to die in the next conflict. I think they're both going to survive and get out of there. I don't know if they're going to go join the prison group, because that might lead to a whole nother set of problems, but perhaps that's the point, that it'll lead to a whole nother set of problems. And more specifically, I think Merle is just going to be waiting to get payback against the governor. He's a smart guy just for all his faults, and he's going to pick his sides intelligently. And hopefully, for the love of God, so will Andrea. She clearly knows that Daryl's involved now, which means the group she left, involuntarily left, is still around and had to invade for a very good reason. Rick and Daryl and all them wouldn't come and attack Woodbury unless there was a damn good reason. Hopefully she understands that, listens to her conscience, and will help Daryl and Merle escape, and also go join the prison group. That's what I can hope for. Andrea was my second favorite character up until Shane died, and then I thought she was going to become my favorite character. So far this season, she's way down on the list.